Hello and welcome to Pilot Wars, the show where we take two pilots of a similar nature, compare and contrast them, talk about how they set up the various characters and worlds, and say which one we think is better. So, I'm Dan.
I'm Olga.
And today, what are we comparing?
We're comparing The Handmaid's Tale and Alias Grace.
There's a little bit of a connection here. We try to find shows that have some major connection, whether it be thematic or they're
stylistic.
Yeah, similar creators, that kind of thing.
So, as in this case, both of them are based on books by Margaret Atwood.
Yes. So Handmaid's Tale, The Handmaid's Tale, was a big deal on Hulu. It got a lot of Emmy nominations and wins. And so now this week we have Alias Grace from, again, the same author.
But on Netflix.
Yes, which is sort of their attempts to capture some of that zeitgeist.
I think so.
Yeah.
So, you know, these books have been around, I think, for quite a while.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting coincidence. Like, oh, wait. Yeah. They got Emmys and critical acclaim.
Yeah. Neither of us have seen anything of these shows other than their pilots.
Or read the books.
Yeah. We just watched them. Yeah. We just watched them for the first time. So we're going to talk about spoilers for the pilots, but we don't know anything else other than that.
Right. We can't really spoil anything beyond that.
So, Olga, can you give us a brief synopsis of the premise of Handmaid's Tale?
Okay. So, it takes place in a world that is... a world in which fertility rates have gone down drastically.
Yep.
And a new totalitarian society has taken hold.
Yep.
And it's being led by men, but women are involved, but also kind of split as either, I would say, oppressors of other women.
Yeah.
Or breeding stock, or the fertile women are being captured and subjugated as the handmaids, and they are basically just there to breed. And then there are other kind of unwanteds and useless people who are sent to
the colonies.
But we haven't seen that really. It's just kind of setting up the world.
Yeah, so it's a kind of complicated premise to set up. It is, again, also just to be clear, it's the dystopic future, but set only a few years, from now or around our, and it's set in America.
It's modern enough in the show. Like, they reference things like Uber and
flashbacks.
In flashbacks. Yeah. So that's also part of the premise. Is it's putting us in the shoes of our protagonist, Offred.
Yep.
Her previous name
was Jane, I think it was.
June.
Yeah.
That's kind of the last line of the pilot is her real name. So the title of the pilot is Offred.
Yep.
Or of Fred.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh. I thought it was like they've been offered up to God or something.
It's of Fred.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And but her old name has been taken away, but she's sitting there and she's remembering, like, she is June.
Okay.
And she's sitting there, and so we're seeing kind of her life as it is now, but also flashing back to
our
the before.
Quote-unquote normal life, our lifestyle.
Before. Yeah, the before. So the world is kind of dying in a lot of ways with pollution and toxicity and, again, the fertility rates.
Yeah.
But overall, it seems normal enough.
Yeah. Well, and I think the big point that you left out is that it's very religious-based.
The current society.
Yeah, the current society is, we have this ultra-intense, radical religion that comes in and they say, the reason why we don't have babies, it's a plague from God. The reason why everything's falling apart is because of all the sinning and the promiscuity and the companies and everything, and they take control. We haven't seen exactly how that takes place yet.
It's still fighting, though.
There's rebellions and stuff.
I'm assuming that'll play a part.
Yeah. So, what did you think?
I thought it was really, really good. Like, I'm kind of sad that I knew I would be sad that I didn't watch it when it was really zeitgeisty.
Yeah.
But
there's more seasons to come.
There are, but I had this feeling where I should be, given what I was seeing, and sometimes in other shows when it's kind of showing the victimization of women, I start to feel just really sick and nauseous, and it just kind of puts me in the shoes of reminding me, like, we haven't gotten very far. We, in a lot of ways, it seems like we're equal, but we're really not as women, and especially when it comes to sexual violence, I would say.
Yeah.
And that it's not pleasant to watch. With this show, or with the pilot, I sat there with bated breath. And even in the things that should have made me feel sick, I just kind of felt defiant. And I didn't feel helpless.
Yeah.
I felt like this is a future we don't have to find ourselves in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that I think there is also, I mean, she carries herself, June, with an air of defiance, even within that reality. So I think there is a level of if she can rebel, like we definitely can.
Yeah. Against our current equivalents. So I would say part of the reason I had this feeling was the acting was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, so good.
And the cinematography and direction were phenomenal. Yeah. It was just so good to watch and see.
Yeah. And I think that the cast is a pretty all-star cast. Everybody did a great job. I definitely thought it was very well done. I think it's like a very respectable thing, and it's certainly a killing premise. And the performances make it, everything about it is killing, like its premise. I feel like I owe it to the show to watch more, and to like the book and what it represents in our current culture. I personally, it just feels, so it's interesting that you feel defiant, because to me I'm just like, oh, this is just so upsetting. I'm just like, I don't know that I want to sort of put myself through in my entertainment world just watching like awful thing after awful thing happening to people.
I suppose.
And because I don't really, at least from this pilot, it doesn't really set up to me like, what is even possible for good things to happen? Like, what is even possible for there to be a plot beyond the premise?
Well, I mean, I think that's where they're introducing the rebellion still being active, and these women who are defiant. I think it's showing that even if things get worse before they get better, the fight is on. Yeah.
Thing about that, though, is when it's such a focused story, when it's so much on this one handmaid, it feels like, what can she possibly do? But maybe, I mean,
it's not about one handmaid though. Just because she's our protagonist, it gives us this hope with I forget her name, but Alexis Bledel's character of like, they were going around and June was saying, oh, she's so pious, and then Alexis Bledel's handmaid was saying like, I thought you were so pious, and it's like, it's doing a really interesting job, and I'm assuming the book is the same, but again, for the purposes of this video, we're talking about the show. The writing is so skillful, and the setting is so skillful, and how it shows the women are complicit in their own subjugation, because that's what's being forced upon them.
They don't feel like they have any choice other than...
Like, they have to just go on to survive. And some are really brainwashed into it. Yeah. But you don't even realize how you are... To bring it right now, it's like, you don't realize you're part of the patriarchy. Yeah. But you are in so many ways. That's like, slut-shaming is patriarchal. Judging women's bodies, their choices. Yeah. That's all part of this greater thing. And men suffer for that as well. But this is a story that... For the purposes, we will follow it from these women. Yeah. Even the barren wives.
Yeah. So we didn't completely set that up.
No.
That wives of the higher up men, even if they're barren, they're allowed to sort of lead the household and stuff.
Because they're the ones who are, in their scripture, I guess it is, it's they tell their men, give me children to raise and they will be mine. So these handmaids are just like
completely breeders.
Yeah, they're breeders, but they are not meant to have love for their children. They are there for the greater good of the society.
Yeah, which to me, that's like the wife part is the weirdest part of the premise to me, because I'm like, why wouldn't you be like, oh, you shouldn't be if you're gonna be this ultra religious group, you could be like, oh, you can't breed, you shouldn't be my wife. Clearly, you sinned in some way. I'm gonna send you away and make one of these breeders my wife, because they can actually give me children.
I'm assuming that'll be explained a bit more, because it is a big question that we had. But overall, I think there's only so much that the show could do to set up the world building of it, and I think it did a really good job of it. It was the way they wove in and out of modern day and flashback through Offred's eyes, and kind of how her story is a greater reflection of everybody's story. I thought it was just really well done.
Yeah, they did a very strong job of, wow, there was such a complicated premise, and there were so many things to explain expositionally. we still got a lot of who she specifically was.
Mm-hmm.
And we still got nice dramatic character moments. I do definitely like the moment you're talking about with Alexis Bledel near the end, where we get a little bit of something positive in the modern time. You know, like we have a little bit of friendship building there. Obviously, who knows where that will go, and it ends on a more down note of her giving her information about spies in her home. But it's nice to have small moments like that. And I think that really stood out. I really love the juxtaposition of what was happening in the past versus now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that they would repeat things, so they'd introduce a word to you, and you'd be like, am I supposed to understand what this is?
Yeah.
And then it was very much show, not tell.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that? Oh, hopefully we'll find out. So you're a little confused, but I feel like it kind of just helped me pay attention.
Yeah.
Or stay alert.
Yeah.
And stay involved.
Yeah. I wasn't a huge fan of especially that it was in the pilot, that the quick setup of that guy who might like her thing.
Yeah, well, I know, but they also set it up of, is he the spy?
Yeah. It just, like, to me, that's, like, the most tropic, like, romance novel aspect of it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. And especially since in that same, we're so focused on her survival.
Yeah.
And she's so focused on finding her daughter.
Yeah.
And, I mean, women can be more than that, and that's also part of it.
Yeah.
But it's just this thing of, all right, we're introducing that, like you said, it's a more tropic, heavy-handed thing of, like, he's witness to her suffocation, but he might be the spy. Da-da-da, you know.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna be with the gardener or whatever, and have to hide it from the man of the house, and, like, what will he do if he finds that? I mean, like, I don't know. It just seems like the most, like, cheesy TV-y piece of it. Definitely a side thing, not a huge issue for me. And you need some sort of, obviously you need points of fun drama in there too, I guess. But
although for now I wouldn't call it that fun.
Well, you know what I mean.
But yeah, it'll develop like everything else.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I'm on board.
Yeah. Are you excited to, like, dive right in?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm kind of like, can we watch another one after after we're done with this video?
Yeah, no, I would totally do that. Yeah, the thing is, I want to see what else there is to the show beyond the premise, and I think that the premise is interesting, and the character work was good, and it certainly has a lot of things to say about modern times through this dystopic lens. I mean, it's the perfect thing of what sci-fi should be, which is saying something about now by coming up with something that's more exaggerated, you know?
But you're also the film person here. What I know, I love the cinematography of it, but can you kind of explain more about what was going on there with that?
I'm
like
trying to think.
Style?
I mean, I definitely think that they poured a lot of money into it, and it showed.
It looked expensive.
Yeah, and I think that that's great. I mean, that was the first time that I was like, okay, Hulu means business here, right? And I think that's been a lot of problems for people, is that it just feels like a lot of Hulu's original programs are sort of second tier, and this is like, there's nothing when you watch this versus a Netflix show where you're like, oh, this is like the low budget version.
Right.
I think that the costuming with the specific red with the whatever, I don't know what you call those things. The
bonnets. They call them something else.
Yeah. The wings or something.
Wings, they call them wings, yeah.
I think that's very iconic, and it's a nice contrast to how much green is in a lot of the shots.
It's so bright. Have you noticed that? That it's so, like, sunny?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, like, overexposed, like, sort of light coming
lens
in.
flares.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, I'm also just thinking about a lot of stuff with the windows and her sort of silhouettes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the silhouettes bring a lot of kind of drama.
Yeah.
To it.
And I think that there's a lot of close-ups too. There's a lot. It's because you have, what's her name, the actress?
Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah, you have someone so good like that, you can really be in her eyes and and the makeup, I think, around her eyes and stuff was very intense.
Yeah. I loved her in Mad Men, so I kind of am really excited to see
more of her,
be really the protagonist of a story, because she's a great actress.
I'm excited about a lot of these people, because, I mean, like, Alexis Bledel I like, but I haven't really seen her do something serious like this.
Samira Wiley from Orange is the New Black.
She's great.
Proven herself time and again.
I love Yvonne Strahovski, so I'm interested to see her as, like, almost like a villain, but, like, an intriguing villain.
Yeah. I'm not ready to call her super sympathetic yet.
Yeah.
But I can see that I should.
Yeah. I mean, and there's just such, like, evocative imagery here with, like, when they have sex and Yvonne Strahovski's, like, right above her or right below her, I guess. Maybe, sort of both.
But also like the grip marks.
Yeah, and also the ending with the beating
murder
of the
guy. I would say, something that they probably won't even explain or dwell on, but when we were seeing that, they were saying, oh, he's a rapist, he raped a handmaid, she was pregnant and caused her to lose the baby.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, well, is he just a guy who is a rapist and decided to rape out of opportunity?
I doubt it.
Or, exactly, I was actually thinking more, what if he and the handmaid fell in love? Or, like, he was her consensual partner. She didn't care about this baby or whatever. Or even if she did, it was the product of rape, effectively. And he was caught. Like, you don't know. But in my mind, I was like, that's just as likely.
Yeah, well, my thinking, too, is that is in some ways... I mean, I think it's multi-layered what that scene is supposed to show you.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think to a certain degree, it's her cautionary tale about that gardener guy. Like you can't, even if he likes you, even if you like him, this is gonna be, this is the ultimate, what could happen here.
Yeah.
I think it's also just showing, it's just so unnerving to see all these victims being, part of their victimhood is now you're such a victim, you must hurt other people.
It's what the society is push them to do.
Yeah, I mean, it almost, like, the closest thing that I can think of, that the first thing I can think of, and it's not exactly the same thing, obviously, but I think, like, child soldiers.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see that.
And there's also just the other layer here, which was sort of the more manifest level of she had just heard that her friend might be dead.
Right, and taking
using this is the one way she can take out her rage.
Yeah, and that's actually a tactic of just keeping people in line, is they have anger and pent-up feelings, but you have them victimize someone else, and you keep them that way.
Yeah. Now, before we sort of move on, the one thing I wanted to say was, because I was thinking about how I'm a really big fan of 1984, and there's clearly a lot of parallels here, especially because they talk about, like, the eyes watching or whatever.
The eyes. This is an eye.
Yeah.
Oh, the eyes being another big deal of grossness there.
I really love 1984, and that pulls me in because it's a book. I think that I would be so much more on board with this if it was a movie, and I could just sit down and be in that space for 2.5 hours
instead of like 10.
Instead of like 10 hours. I think that's what's been pushing me away. I'm like, I don't know if I can handle that, but I also feel like I should.
Well, yeah. I don't believe there is a Handmaid's Tale movie.
Yeah.
Probably because I don't know enough, but I feel like this isn't something that can be skillfully
pushed into
done in 2.5 hours. Yeah. I think there's a reason this went to series.
Yeah.
Because this is probably the best way of
handling this topic.
Exactly. Yeah. And we haven't seen it, but I think that once we watch more, we'll see that it's not just filler episodes between the beginning and the finale, and that these moments of these like shot, close-ups and silent, scary, heart-pounding moments that are just absolutely nothing is really on screen except someone's face. That adds to it, and adds to the mentality of it.
And you have more time for that, for sure.
Exactly, and I think that's important to the show.
So after that epic discussion about Handmaid's Tale,
we're not going to have a lot to say about
Alias Grace. Interesting show, because I do feel like it's been getting some critical acclaim. We were not big fans. The basic premise of this is that we have this, it's set in 1850s Canada?
Something like that,
and we have this woman, Grace, who was convicted of murder and suspected of multiple murders 15 years ago, and she's been in prison for 15 years, ever since she was 16.
She got a life sentence she's a maid, and for murdering her mistress with the help of, like, a stable boy or something like that.
And so...
she's an Irish immigrant.
Yeah. And the majority of the plot of here is that we have a... I guess psychologist, a doctor of the mind of the time comes in.
Very rudimentary science there.
Comes in, starts talking to her, wants to get to the heart of what's going on. A lot of people want to see her free, don't think
because she was so young, and they think she was influenced by the other guy who's been hanged. Yeah. And she was supposed to be hanged too, but instead she got this life sentence. Yeah. But she's such a model prisoner, they give her leeway for things. Yeah. And
so they have, the majority of this is the doctor talking to her about her life story. And so in this first episode, we're just sort of hearing about her early life, dealing with her father, and like the beginnings of her coming into houses and working as a maid.
How she got to where she is.
Yeah. So what were your problems here?
So I think part of our problem was that we watched this after the pilot of The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
That was problem number one. That, based on how long...
Set a high bar.
It set such a high bar.
Yep.
And I think that, starting from one thing I had a problem with, is it was so heavy-handed with its language, with its narration, and with its flashbacks.
Yeah.
It's like, if that was done with a skillful hand, the way it was in The Handmaid's Tale, I think I would, like, just a lighter touch, less clunky, less, like, here it is, I'm narrating the story of my life.
Yeah.
And here, flashback.
Yeah.
Oh, and flash forward, and flashback. Like, it just...
So there were a few things here that I felt like, at once, they weren't as skilled or as polished as Handmaid's Tale was, but they also thought they were better than Handmaid's. You know what I mean? Like, the show thought better of itself.
Yeah, I can see
that's like, because, I mean, I'm not saying, like, that's the air that it gives off, because when you use the kind of language they use, when you start out with a quote from Dickens, or what
Emily
was that? Dickinson.
Different.
From Dickinson, it just gives it an air of, oh, we are lofty. And even her thoughts in her head and everything, like her narration, we had narration in Handmaid's Tale too.
Right.
But that was very human, right? Whereas this is very poetic.
I could not follow... Alright, so going back to high school, I was not a huge fan of Dickinson or poetry in general of that era.
Yeah.
But I could understand it for the most part when I could read it.
Yeah. They're
talking like poetry, and I could not follow the thread of her, like, run-on sentences.
Yeah, well, I think, so, here's the thing. It's hard to critique because I think there's a place for doing something different. There's a place for being stylized and saying, we're going to speak in a more poetic way. This whole show is going to be like a grand, epic poem. But I think that, for me, I mean, it was especially the ending, where we're going into the end here, right, of the episode, and she's talking about working with the doctor and talking with the doctor and how all these metaphors upon metaphors, and she's like, I feel like a butterfly's went here, but I also feel ripped open, not like a dead body, like a peach that was peeled and that.
But there's a stone inside.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, this feels almost like I'm making, like, it would be like what I would say if I was making fun of the show. Yeah, and I'm just like, I don't feel like you're a human.
Right. It's kind of like, I love period pieces. Yeah. Like, I really do. When I saw the trailer for this, I was intrigued. I saw it several months ago, I think. And I was like, I'm going to be all about this. All right. This is like what people think a parody of a period piece. Like, oh, look at the costumes and there's even a sea voyage. And... she's in this big fancy house. It's like small girl, like little fish, big pond. It's like got all the tropes. And none of the artistry.
Well, we should also throw out this is also loosely based on true events. Right. But
okay. She sounded too smart for her station. Will we find out why she got so smart?
I guess she has a lot of time to read potentially, but
okay, maybe. I don't know. I guess the best part was the costumes.
Well, okay. So the one thing that I did like as far as narration and stuff, I thought the very opening monologue I thought was actually quite good.
I don't remember it at all.
So the opening monologue is her talking about all the things that people have said about her.
Oh, wait, yeah, that was good.
So the opening I thought was great and was the most clear-cut thing that I feel like you can attribute to in connection with, like, Handmaid's Tale, right? Yeah. She's talking about, people have said... basically they said all these opposite things, but they found a way to make everything bad, right? Like they said, they're giving her... She's cunning and devious. Yes. So she's even if she's smart, it's in a bad way. Even if she is capable, it's in an evil way. Like,
even if she's dumb, she's like so soft in the head that why is she a benefit to, like, and we're following this actress and she's making all these little faces of like reflecting those things that she's saying. I thought that was going to be a sign of greater things. Yeah.
I liked the performance of the main actress. I thought she did a pretty good job.
Her performance was fine. Yeah. I can't say that anyone else's performance...
Nothing stood out. Her.
Especially, like, the next biggest character is the doctor. Yeah. Okay, like, wooden. He's so bland.
Yeah, nothing about him stands out. Yeah. I mean, especially when you think about, like, this obviously evoked a lot of feelings that, about Mindhunter, which we're not going to talk about specifics.
Right.
But
it's
the same. The main character of Mindhunter is sort of similar to this doctor, right? He wants to understand people. He's invested in this.
Right.
And within like 10 minutes, I was fascinated by the main character in Mindhunter. Here, I was just like, okay, you're just like basically exposition man.
Like you are the reason behind why she gets to talk.
Yeah.
How do you feel about how Alias Grace handles the topic and the subject of female subjugation in society? Because at the end of the day, I think that's what they're getting at.
Well,
she's literally in prison, but also
everybody has their opinions about her because she's a woman, and
there's the story of her father and how he's an alcoholic and abusive,
and there's also definitely hints of racism and cultural things too, and status and stuff like that. But I think I think it's interesting that both also hint at rebellions and people who want better for themselves and things like that. I think that on Alias Grace, there's certainly a possibility for a greater discussion there, and that she does seem to represent a larger problem. But
which larger problem?
With just how women were treated back then, how they were thought of as human beings.
Right.
But it didn't hit me in the same way, for sure.
Yeah.
Because she was also because I just didn't connect with her in general.
Mm-hmm.
In the flashbacks, you can kind of connect with her, but you don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whereas in the present, I'm just like, she just seems like such a weird jumble mess where I'm just like, I don't really care that much.
Yeah. So there's this 5-minute scene where they talk about blankets.
Oh, yeah.
Or quilts, quilts. And how a bed is a place you're born and you die. It's not just a positive place, it's a negative place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is she hinting at... So a lot of it is about what... Yeah, but well, she's talking about especially how that's a place of struggle for women.
Yeah.
And her own struggle of her mother died in the same bed as her.
Yeah.
Her father tried to rape her in a bed.
Yeah.
So I guess, I'm trying to find how she makes these quilts for other people, but she doesn't get one. I'm like, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
But I feel so removed from it in a way where I don't she had a good performance, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
I don't care about her character.
You don't feel emotionally connected.
No.
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, is that because of that flowery language, and because it's all about talking to you, literally the whole thing is about talking to you, and you could say that, I'm sure people could argue that Handmaid's Tale was sort of forced or what was heavy-handed, like you were saying.
It could
but
be too,
at least we don't have narration saying, "Man, it's so bad that they're telling us that women are the problem. They're victim blaming." Instead, we get the scene where they make all people point at this girl and say, "It was your fault you were raped."
Yeah, you invited it.
Yeah, that. Yes, that's still kind of on the nose, but it's not them expressly telling you what you should think here.
Especially since we're seeing Offred, or Elizabeth Moss's character, she's resisting doing that.
Yeah.
And then finally she goes along with it for herself.
Yeah.
There's no real... I guess another equivalent of that or comparison of that could be the cafeteria scene in the prison where Grace is sitting and the other prisoners are like, "Oh, so you're the doctor's whore now, Grace." It's like, oh, look, they are slut-shaming her. They are turning against each other. But it's just like... And I have no problem normally connecting with the characters in period pieces. Yeah. It's just something about this one where I just... 20 minutes in, I was like, I'm sorry, are you bored?
Yeah.
I was so bored.
Yeah, I think that, I think it's particularly interesting also because in theory, Alias Grace could actually have much more of an impact because instead of it being like Handmaid's Tale, which is imagine if this happened, instead it says, things like this used to happen all the time. It wasn't that long ago.
Right.
You should be able to connect with this. But we actually were connecting more with the imagined than with the...
Yeah.
And which just shows you the importance of storytelling.
Yeah, I'm not super invested in figuring out the murder mystery of it either, which, I'm like, she could have done it, she might not have.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about
fine.
something as silly as American Vandal.
I was so invested in that.
By the end of the first episode of that, I was like, I don't necessarily love Dylan, but
Right.
he's interesting, and I want to know whether he did it or not.
Yeah.
I don't really care with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Not for us. Handmaids definitely wins this versus.
We're in terms of winning it, we're gonna keep watching.
Yeah.
At least I am.
Yeah. No, I want to.
Yeah. And Alias Grace, well, have fun with it if you wanna.
Yeah, if you have different opinions about that, totally let us know. Let us know in the comments below.
Tell us which episode turns it around.
Yeah.
If it does.
Or if you just totally disagree about the pilot, I'd love to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, like, I like to, as much as possible, answer every single comment that we get. So let us know your thoughts. And look out for future videos and future
pilot versus pilots, or leave us suggestions of pilots that you'd like to compare. Things
we're thinking about, maybe doing like The Office versus Parks and Rec, Ozark versus Breaking Bad, that kind of thing. Things that have similar connections. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.